A warm welcome to everyone to my series on the Secret Book of John. We have traveled far, and we are now in the thick of a battle between darkness and light. The earthly Adam has already been created. A breath of the power of God has been blown into him, the power of wisdom. In his animate form, he now stands erect. And in response, we saw in the previous session that the archons threw him into the mass of matter. And now the first countermeasure is enacted from the Spirit on high. The Blessed Father had compassion on the Mother's power. He sent a portion of his good and merciful Spirit as a helper to the first to descend, Adam. She is luminous insight. She it is whom he calls life, who assists all creation, laboring with it. We can see here again this multi-layered reading of Genesis. It's an allegorical reading. Adam being cast into the mass of matter is him being expelled from the garden. And the helper who is sent to him is the spiritual Eve. Recall that she is called a helper in Genesis. The mother is wisdom. But who is the Blessed Father? Is it the invisible Spirit, or is it the being called Mother Father who is the Barbello? We don't really know. At any rate, in response to Adam sinking into matter, this Father provides him with a spiritual Eve, a helper, according to Genesis 2:18, which is a kind of second dose of the divine light. Recall that he's already received the light power of the mother, and now he receives luminous insight. She is given by the Blessed Father, who is beneficent, like the Platonic good. He was good. But this being is also compassionate, like the Christian God, Ephesians 2:4. Luminous insight is Adam's life, which is a title that comes from Genesis 3:20, the mother of all the living. This was a title that was already given to Barbello. She raises Adam up to his fulfillment, pointing out the downfall of his deficiency. She then instructs him about the ascent. The luminous insight hid within Adam, so that the rulers would not know, but our fellow sister, who carries us wisdom, will right her deficiency by means of the luminous insight. I suppose we could see the luminous insight as a manifestation of the Barbello. That's certainly how she is read in the longer versions of the Secret Book of John. The fact that Eve fulfills Adam, the spiritual Eve fulfills Adam, is a reading of the two become one flesh. It is a holy and spiritual marriage that is occurring here. But interestingly, it is Eve, or the spiritual Eve, aka luminous insight, who is playing the part of the male by penetrating Adam and coming inside of him. Her plan, apparently, is to live inside Adam in order to escape detection. By extension, however, Adam is made the passive partner in this spiritual marriage. Humanity is not created for itself. It is created as the vessel of wisdom, to help wisdom fill her lack. That may be somewhat deflating, but actually I think it's helpful because it's a check on arrogance and anthropocentrism. We are here for our mother. We are those who have descended. The light power that has come into Adam is the first to descend. And what luminous insight teaches Adam is first the downfall, then the ascent. It's said in John that no one goes up to the Father except he who came down, the Son of the human. But in this tale, all humans come down and go back up. It is our destiny. It is wisdom's destiny to make right her lack. Then the human beamed with light, since the shadow of the light was within him. Then he was exalted higher than his builders. The whole governing body of the authorities bent down and saw that the human surpassed them. Now, in a way, Adam when he is united to the spiritual Eve, can't hide the fact that the spiritual Eve is inside him because she makes a difference. The archons or planetary authorities notice that the human surpasses them, even though they don't really have access or eyes to see the luminous insight within him. In fact, they can't because they themselves are animate beings and they cannot perceive the things of the spirit. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Instead of being able to use Adam's light for their own purposes, the seven authorities are threatened by it. So earlier, they tried to cover the light by plunging Adam into the mass of matter. They now realize that matter cannot hide Adam's superiority, and this causes them great shock, so that they then produce their own countermeasure to luminous insight. Then they took counsel with angels and rulers and the rest of the powers. At that time, air and earth was mixed with water and fire. They mixed them with the four winds. They blew with flame. They stitched the elements together and made a vast commotion. What is being described here? Well, what's being described is the creation of the material human body. This is the countermeasure that the archons use in order to dampen the effects of luminous insight. This is their means of gaining control over Adam again. And they are pictured much like blacksmiths, mixing the four elements, using the four winds, which is a biblical image from Ezekiel 37 and other places. And like filthy blacksmiths who make a vast commotion as they pound on their iron and forge their tools, they create the human body, that is, the material and fleshly body. They made a second formation from earth, water, flame, and air, that is, from dark matter and desire, along with their counterfeit spirit. This is our chain. This is the cave of the formation of the body, with which the robbers clothed the human, the chain of amnesia. Now, I myself wonder whether this second formation is a kind of narrative seam. That is, the second formation originally described the creation of the fleshly Eve from the same four elements. Alternatively, it is simply a repetition of the formation of Adam's material body from dark matter and desire and the counterfeit spirit. Here, I believe we have the first mention of the counterfeit spirit. It's already built into the human body, and it will appear as a character later in the story. It is a logical countermeasure against the luminous insight in Adam. Again, this is a war of tit for tat. The upper divine world does something, gives Adam a benefit, and the lower archons try to dampen and destroy it. They cannot actually destroy the benefits of God, but they try to dampen and suppress them. And this material body is variously named, first as the shadow of death, then as a chain of amnesia, and as we'll see later, a cave. The shadow of death should remind you of Psalm 23, yea, though I walk in the shadow of death, or in the valley of the shadow of death. This is obviously a reference to great tribulation, but I think for the author of the Secret Book, it expresses mortality. Adam, before being put into a material body, couldn't die. He was an immortal being. The flesh as the cause of amnesia is an Orphic and Pythagorean notion that souls entering bodies must First drink from the river Lethe, and it's this very word Lethe, forgetfulness, that is used here in our text. After drinking from the river, they forget their heavenly origin and have to repeat life over and over and over again. I should also briefly mention the cave image. The cave probably evokes Plato's famous image of the cave in the Republic. Although, if you remember, in Plato's allegory, the cave represents the cosmos in which we are all trapped. It is here a powerful image of the body. And I think really the only thing comparable to this kind of anti material body, anti flesh body rhetoric is the Hermetic parallel in the Corpus Hermeticum 7.2. I'll just quote from Schopenhauer's translation. Quote, "Seek a guide to take you by the hand and lead you to the portals of knowledge. There shines the light cleansed of darkness. There no one is drunk. But first you must rip off the tunic that you wear, the garment of ignorance, the foundation of vice, the bonds of corruption, the dark cage, the living death, the sentient corpse, the portable tomb, the resident thief, the one who hates through what he loves and envies through what he hates." Unquote. It's a powerful image, a powerful set of images, and I think it's important to remember here that these are the kinds of images which convinced scholars of the 20th century that so-called Gnostics hated the body. But I don't think it's hatred of the fleshly body as such that is the point. I think, as this passage reveals, which we have now before us, the issue is that Gnostics hated death and that the mortal body was just that, subject to die. And it represents our exile and alienation. Just to read this passage, in this way the human became mortal. This is the first exile, the first alienation. Nevertheless, the thought of the pre-existing light came within him and raised up Adam's thought on high. So again, the problem of the fleshly body isn't that it's made of flesh and they don't hate matter, but they hate the results, exile and alienation from the upper world. But the passage ends with a positive note. Gnostics aren't depressing, and they aren't depressed. The luminous insight, here referred to as the thought of the pre-existing light, had already came within Adam, but here again her activity is repeated and raised up his thought on high. And this is what enables us, whether in the material body or out of it, to think the thoughts of the divine world. We are restricted and obviously limited by the body, and death is a negative experience for a lot of us. But we are not trapped. And that's really important to understand. This is not Gnostic world hatred or body hatred. This is a realization that our true body is intelligible, and that body belongs on high.